Hey everyone, Jay here. I got a comment recently in the Coffee Wonderland series from one of our viewers that said, you preserve beans in the freezer? Can you tell me how long they can stay in there without getting stale? Sure, Alert Media, not a problem. The simple answer is that roasted coffee can remain indefinitely in the freezer. And why is this? Because as Greg in the video mentioned about chemistry and understanding chemistry, the moisture content of roasted coffee is about 2 to 3%. Now people will say things like, oh, there's going to be freezer burn and there's all this kind of stuff that's happening. Freezer burn is caused by two things: moisture lost in the product as well as exposure to air. Now, if you're keeping your coffee wrapped up and sealed, exposure to air really isn't a big deal. And also the other side of it is that there's only 2 to 3% moisture. Let's compare that to beef. Beef typically has about 60 to 75% moisture content. Now, when you have that much moisture content, there's a lot of moisture that can be compromised due to freezing, exposure to air, and moisture loss, right? And if you've ever tried eating freezer burn meat, you know what I'm talking about. It's not very pleasant. However, because the water content of coffee is so low, you really can't freezer burn it. You really can't damage it in that kind of way. And that's why Greg in the video was, keeping it in the freezer in a container. And there's other people that they'll say all kinds of things about it, like, it has to be kept in smaller bags, it has to be kept in this, it has to be kept in that. I haven't found that to be the case. And I've actually been freezing roasted coffee for over 15 years now. There's a lot of people out there that'll be like, oh, you should never freeze coffee.
Well, they're not chemists.
In about 2009, I decided that I was going to do a more formal test. So in April 2009, actually James Hoffman, the Hoffman himself, gave me a bag of their 8 Estrellas espresso from Square Mile Coffee. He gave me a bag of the coffee to try, and I decided that, you know what, I'm going to use this as we open the new coffee shop and train our new staff. So what I did is I took that coffee, I cupped it critically, made a bunch of notes, and then took the coffee, put it back in its bag, and put it in the freezer. I let it sit there from April to October, so more or less 6 months in the freezer, not touching it, just letting it do its thing. And then I brought it out for a cupping session with our new staff that we've been training for over a month now, doing regular weekly cuppings. And by this point, they had already gotten into the groove of cupping and the style of cupping, as well as the different protocols and standards, and have really gotten to the point of proficiency with describing coffees. And so we took some notes, and they pretty much matched up to what I had tasted and written down in April that year. So what does all this mean? It means that you're not going to find very much degradation of coffee, even under extended freezing terms. Now, to be honest, I keep coffees frozen all the time, for years at a time, mainly because I get a lot of coffee from different people and friends and sources around the industry, and I just can't drink them all by myself right away. So I toss them in the freezer and just kind of leave it there, and then when I remember it or decide that I want to have that coffee, I'll pop it out and drink it. Here's some things to keep in mind. When freezing coffee, keep it in the freezer. Don't take it out and don't let it thaw out. Meaning that if you're going to keep a bag of coffee in your freezer, put it in the freezer, let it get frozen, let it do its thing, and then when it comes time to use it, take it out, dose out just the amount that you need, seal it back up, and put it back in the freezer. That way, the rest of your beans won't be exposed to air so much, and there will be no chance for condensation to form on the bean. Then grind. Some people will tell you, hey, you want to thaw it out. I don't really find that to be necessary. Really, you take these frozen beans, which really aren't that frozen because of the low moisture content. Remember, there's only 2 to 3% moisture, so frozen coffee is not going to be the rigid, hard mess that beef or pork or any kind of typical protein would be.
Chemistry thing is that chemical reactions, staling reactions, are temperature dependent, and they are also exponential functions of temperature, just like diffusivity. So the way to slow down staling is to reduce the temperature. So freeze it, and it won't stale.
You can take that coffee, put it in the grinder, and grind it with no ill effect to your grinder. I mean, let's be honest, the hardness of coffee is no match for the hardness of steel or ceramic burrs. So feel free to put that in there cold and then grind. And that whole action of grinding, remember, grinding is friction, and friction creates heat, so that will bring your coffee up to temperature, warm it up a bit, and then you can just brew with it as normal, and it turns out perfectly fine. So, in conclusion, go ahead, freeze your coffee, put in the bags, keep them tightly rolled up. You can put them in jars like Greg did, and that's perfectly fine. Just take out what you need at the time you need it, grind it fresh, and make sure you put the coffee back right away. And pretty much from there, you can use that coffee relatively indefinitely. I haven't really found a point where degradation really came into effect. Try to keep it wrapped up tight, keep it frozen, you should be good to go. If you have any questions about freezing coffee, or if you don't believe in freezing coffee, and you think that I'm a nut job, put that in the comments down below. I'll be happy to talk to you more about it. I hope this answered your question. Thank you very much, Alert Media, for asking the question. Look forward to seeing you all next time.